It is 4 p.m. We're bringing developing news and the stories behind the headlines. This is Storycon, the Story Conference. I'm Ed Lingao. Some stories for watching this Tuesday, December 30. Batangas Congressman Leandro Leviste denies allegations that he illegally obtained the so-called Cabral files from the DPWH. He says the documents were given to him on September 4 with approval from Secretary Dizon. The file, supposedly from the late Public Works Undersecretary Cathy Cabral, lists proponents of projects under the DPWH. Meantime, Dizon is also debunking claims of Leviste of alleged budget insertions for flood control projects. Dizon says the Basis Conversion and Development Authority, or BCDA, which he previously headed, has no flood control projects funded through insertions, allocable funds, or any discretionary sources. The Public Works Chief calls the timing of the claim suspicious amid reports that some Public Works staff have accused Leviste of forcibly taking the files from Cabral. House Public Accounts Chairperson Terry Dizon says an ethics complaint may be filed against Congressman Leviste over the alleged unlawful acquisition of the so-called Cabral files. Dizon says Leviste must account for how the documents were obtained, copied, stored, and circulated, and whether he had authority from Public Works Secretary Dizon to access them. Dizon adds that allegations involving the unlawful handling of official documents warrant scrutiny under congressional ethics proceedings to ensure facts and due process. The executive branch has received the ratified 2026 General Appropriations Act on December 29. Executive Secretary Ralph Recto says President Bongbong Marcos and his team are scrutinizing all allocations and provisions to account for changes from the original National Expenditure Program, or NEP. He adds that the review aims to ensure the spending bill meets legal requirements and addresses the needs of the Filipino people. Malacanang earlier said the president is expected to sign the 2026 budget on the first week of January. And the recent Pulse Asia survey shows VP Sara Duterte continuing to enjoy small majority approval ratings, or approval and trust ratings, of 56 and 54% respectively. President Bongbong Marcos, on the other hand, receives more disapproval than approval for his fourth quarter performance, with 48% disapproving and 47% expressing distrust. Disapproval of the president is highest in Mindanao, the Visayas, and among lower income class E, where he gets majority approval only in the rest of Luzon. The vice president, meantime, is widely approved across regions and socio-economic classes. The poll, conducted from December 12 to December 15 with 1,200 Filipino adults, has a plus-minus 2.8% error margin. And joining us in a bit will be Storycon's resident political heckler, Tito Rol Llamas. I think he's still mobile. But from the Philippine Star, we already have Editor-in-Chief Ami Pamintuan. Ami, magandang December 30 sa'yo.
Happy New Year.
At hindi pa naman, pero malapit na.
New Year na ako, wala ako bukas eh.
Oo nga, balita ko nga, ikaw talaga. Naisan mo na naman ako. So, sinong tao ba dyan sa inyo bukas?
Hindi kami, nandito rin ako.
Diyan ka rin?
Kaya lang wala akong kasama dito Siyempre may pasok kami, wala namang bakasyon ng January.
Tataka ako. Naisip ko, baka nagbakasyon bigla si Ami Pamintuan eh. Okay, so only a break from TV.
Merry Christmas daw ang Merry Christmas ang house. Ewan ko, yun yung latest kay Batangas Congressman Leviste. 2 million each daw yung mga congressman.
Yeah, but it's been denied already by some people, including members of the minority. So I don't know how far.
Kaya nga, yan ang bine-verify natin.
I don't know how far that supposed Christmas bonus goes or went, if it ever went at all. Was it across the board ba, or only for select people, or was it non-existent?
Baka hindi lahat nabigyan. May nabudol.
So, yun nga lang.
Baka may nabudol.
Yun nga lang kasi mahirap maghanap ng aamin.
Kaya nga. Saka paano kaya yung bigayan? Remember, may yung yung panahon ni GMA, nasa supot yung mga pera, no?
Oo. Yeah. We remember that. Nagpuntahan pa ng Malacanang, di ba?
Malacanang, oo. Nagkwento yung pare, di ba? Nagulat daw sila. kung ano yung laman ng pera nila.
So hindi man lang in-ATM, no? Hindi man lang in-online.
Hindi. Indisputable yung 10 billion additional sa house.
Sa house, oo.
Na budget for next year. Although sinasabi naman nila, hindi naman daw sikreto yon. Pero parang hindi yata natin nabalitaan yun nung ginagawa yung ano, no? Diba nakabantay yung civil society?
But that's also something they did for the House, the Senate, and Malacanang for 2025. I remember they also increased the budgets of both chambers of Congress and Malacanang in 2025. Doon sa
Pero
BICAM,
BICAM pa lang to eh.
sa BICAM din, BICAM of 2025, they also increased the budgets, the office budgets ng mga yan.
Oo nga.
So, I suppose as far as they're concerned, it's not unusual anymore.
Baka doon nakuha yung 2 million na Christmas.
Teka, kung
Christmas
kung
bonus.
ano, kung ilan ba sila ngayon? 312. Kung totoo lang 'yun, kung totoo 'yun, that's what 624 million. Kung totoo 'yun at silang lahat across the board.
Oo nga. Mukhang hindi naman lahat yata eh.
That's
Kung
more than-
nagdi-deny minority eh.
Oh, that's more than half a billion already.
Oo.
Oy, may ano pa,
Malaki-laki din yung
may butal pa.
minority yung hindi yung opposition block yun, yung minority yun.
Yeah. Yun nga, but the challenge is finding somebody who will tell us na meron kang nagkaroon ng ganong bigayan.
Oo nga mukhang dumadami yung kalaban ni dumadami yung kaaway ni Congressman Leviste.
So let's see if our Congress reporter can dig up somebody who is willing to talk. Not unless Leviste is willing to tell us where he found out about it. Then that's a different
Marami
thing
mga
altogether.
intriga sa kanya ngayon. Meron pang, di nga ba yung binabanggit na inagaw daw yung, nagagawan daw sila ng file ni Cabral dun sa DPWH.
May lumabas ng picture ng
Kaya may lumabas na video. Video naman na, well, they're walking together at may para siyang hawak-hawak na papel. Pero papel ba yung hawak niya? Yung file ba is hard copy ba o nasa
si
digital?
Leviste, I understand, was saying
Digital,
he has
diba?
a soft copy.
Dinownload eh.
Oo. Ang hindi, well, you know how it
Digital.
is. We don't know if he has both the soft copy and some hard copies of other. Kasi it may not just be one document eh.
Yes.
So we can't really
Kaya
conflate
nga.
it yet eh.
Hindi malinaw, no? Kasi partial nga daw yung nilabas niya. Talaga naman partial yung konti lang naman yung nakita natin.
And we've had a flurry of denials from Vince Dizon saying na he never gave any authority to release any files to Leviste. So he's also been consistent with that in the same way that Leviste has been consistent na nagbigay ng paalam itong si Dizon para makakuha siya ng files. So at this particular point, we are not really sure whether the files being released by Leviste will stand up to scrutiny.
Kaya papailan na nga daw ng ethics, di ba?
Because in the end,
Possible ethics
in the
complaint.
end, it has to be shown
Because
that
of the manner. Na kinuha yung file.
and
Ba't di natin authenticate muna yung file? no?
yeah, because at this particular point, even if there are allegations that Leviste, and still these are still allegations, even if there are allegations Leviste forcibly took the files and then eventually released them to the public, we don't know for certain if the files he is releasing to the public are the files he got untouched from
Kasi
the
pati yung
TVD
sa
case.
ombudsman, di ba? Si Miko Clavano, yun din ang sinasabi. Na partial daw yung nirelease at hindi nila alam kung ano exactly what they're talking about. Hindi kaya magkita-kita na lang sila, no?
But, ako, nag-usap ko ng mga editors about this eh. I think we also need to be clear about the terminologies here.
Yes.
Kasi si Leviste, in an interview with us previously, he made a sweeping generalization that these are insertions. And that consequently, these are anomalous by nature.
Sinabi ba niyang anomalous? Kasi alam ko, whenever we talk about insertions, we clarify na
No.
merong, along the process, meron talagang, during the budget process, talagang merong insertion na inaalaw eh. Di ba?
Yeah, that's why I said he insinuated that these were anomalous Kasi when we prodded him some more, he acknowledged naman eventually na they're not necessarily anomalous per se.
Yes.
And even
Kasi
yung
pati si Ping Lacson di ba?
Oh.
Yun ang sinasabi.
And even yung pagkaka-identify niya of some non-legislators as receiving allocables, that's not necessarily anomalous.
Sinabi ba niya? Hindi ko matandaan.
Yeah. I asked him about that Now, what's wrong if non-legislators propose projects sa NEP? Kasi NEP pa lang naman to
NEP yun
Oh.
You're planning, di ba?
Oo.
You are planning the budget
And
So of course you will propose for funding.
And any citizen, actually, any responsible citizen should also make proposals if he feels the need for his community.
Saka hinahanda mo yung yung expenditure program mo, di ba?
In other words, it should not be the exclusive jurisdiction of congressmen and senators to make proposals
Or
for
the
projects.
executive even.
Oo, di ba? So, I made that clear in a question to him na, so what's wrong with that? Wala naman daw, basta lang walang kumukubra. So, these things have to be made clear because people are jumping the gun. Pag sinabing insertions, automatically, that's wrong. Pag sinabing...
Yan din ang sinasabi ni Toby Chanko, di ba? Kasi na-issuehan din siya ng ganyan. Sabi niya, talaga naman kami mga congressman, lalo na kami, local ang constituency.
Oo.
We lobby for funding for projects na nilalapit sa amin ng constituent namin.
Yeah.
Ang pinaproblema lang naman natin sa insertion ay yung nasa BICAM
Yung nasa BICAM
diba?
kasi labas sa proseso.
Yung last minute, saka yung nasa small committee na hanggang ngayon, hindi na natin nalaman kung ano nangyari.
Also, labas sa proseso yon.
Oo, yun.
Diba?
Yung mga, saka yung bigla-biglang yung, halimbawa yung NEP, bigla-bigla na lang yung public works, biglang naging mas mataas kaysa sa education. Yung ganyang klaseng insertion.
So to the people
natin.
listening and watching, let's be clear about these things. Let's not be triggered by the use of certain terminologies. Kaya in our questions and answers, we try to press certain buttons. Parang, so what's wrong with this? What's wrong with that?
This is part of the process o lumabas kayo?
Kasi minsan by
Yung
insinuation
BICAM, marami
lang.
tayong tanong. Kasi itong BICAM na to, kahit ni-live stream nila, yung horse trading actually went on behind well, outside the live stream.
It's behind the scenes.
Diba?
Okay, Ami, let's bring in our other Ronald. Wala pa ang ating...
The other Ronald.
Wala pa ang
Wala si
ating
Tokayo.
Ronald Llamas, our international man of mystery. Pero nakasama natin ang ating international survey man of mystery, si Pulse Asia President
Hindi
Ronald
man of
Holmes.
mystery yan
Hi, sir. Good afternoon. Thank you
Hi,
for joining us.
Professor.
Happy New Year, Ed. Happy New Year, Ami. Wala pa si Gucci
Happy
Boy.
New Year.
Ang tawag niyo, Gucci Boy. Bakit naman Gucci Boy? Ay, si Gucci Boy. Okay, gets ko na. Sorry. Slow ako. Kayo, sir, baka matrouble kayo yan. Sir, anyway, I was perusing the latest Pulse Asia survey, December 12 to 15. Okay, it notes here that essentially parang walang masyadong movements that are substantial dun sa numbers of both president and vice president. 2 percentage points, 3%, thereabouts. So basically, it's more or less the same as September I suppose in statistical terms. But despite that, we had major developments from September to December. Why do you think that is? Na parang ang dami nangyari, ang dami nagrally, ang dami nagalit, pero hindi masyadong gumalaw ang mga numbers.
Well, in the first place, the numbers are low. Mababa na siya, Ed, no, Ami? Pagtingnan natin. This is not the lowest that the president had. Yung pinakamababa ni Bongbong Marcos na approval rating, if I recall, was March 2025. 25% lang ang approving sa kanya at mayorya yung disapproving. Medyo naka-recover siya since then, but it's still just 1/3 approving and all half disapproving. Bakit hindi nagbago sa kahit na ang dami nangyari? Well, partly, makikita din natin historically, pagdating ng fourth quarter survey, medyo tempered yung opinion ng tao tungkol sa assessment ng administration. Ewan ko dahil parating ang Pasko. This is normal in a fourth quarter survey. No? You don't see that much of substantive change unless there are things that really led to a worsening of their material condition.
Actually, ang medyo nag-nudge ng konti yung disapproval rating ni President Marcos. Considering all that's happening, bakit kaya ganon?
Umakyat siya ng 4 na points lang, Ami. Medyo margin area nationally. Pero ang pinamalaking pagtaas ng disapproval niya na beyond the margin of error sa NCR. Majority na ang disapproving sa pagganap ng kanyang tungkulin sa NCR. Ito yung isang area na medyo nag-hold kay Bongbong Marcos for quite some time. Pero ngayon, 53% are disapproving of his performance as president. And then you have 50% who are distrusting. Also an increase, no, significant, 13 points increase from our survey in September. So, medyo yung NCR, mas attentive siguro at mas maraming kaganapan sa NCR. No? You had the rally held by the Iglesias and then you had the Trillion People March and yung baha sa Luneta ba yun? I forgot the name of that over the last quarter also.
Pero yung corruption factor lang ba yan or is it more economic pa rin? Inflation pa rin ba yan? Prices, jobs?
Inflation pa rin, Ami, ang main concern. That's about 6 out of 10 Filipinos citing inflation sa main concern. Hindi naman naggumalaw rin yun, no? Compared to, let's say, the previous survey as an urgent concern. Pumapangalawang corruption, no? And there's an insignificant decline, just 3 percentage points. So, but the top 5 concerns are large. Of the top 5 concerns, 4 are economic. So you have inflation, you have pay, you have jobs, and you have poverty.
Sir, I'm also looking at again, yung approval ratings, no? Well, tell me if I'm getting this right, pero ang malaking nag-change is from the undecided. Nabawasan yung mga undecided, dumagdag sila sa dumagdag sila sa disapprovals. For both, disapproval kay BBM plus 4 percentage points change, VP Sara plus 2 percentage points change, versus yung undecided, nabuwasan ng ng 5 percentage points yung kay Bongbong, tsaka 4 percentage points yung kay Sara. So does this mean that people are getting more, I don't know if polarized is the right word for it.
That means that people are more or less firm with regard to their assessment pag bumababa yung indecision, no? Although ang pagbaba ng indecision dito, medyo marginal rin lang,
Okay.
Because yung 5 percentage points is still within that margin of error, as we say, the statistical margin of error. So you still have 2 out of 10 Filipinos generally undecided as to whether they're approving or disapproving of the performance of the president or the vice president.
Okay, fair point. So, tapos, I don't know, I think we've asked you this before kasi basically naman pareho yung numbers from September. Pero mataas nga yung performance rating for VP Sara. But on the other hand, I mean, how do we square that or how do we account for that given the fact that in effect, the VP is right now still a spare tire. Wala naman siyang ibang ginagawang trabaho. Not even DepEd anymore. So I don't know if this comes up in your questionings, in your surveys, but how do people say that they approve of the performances?
It's actually, parang pwede mong tignan na popularity rating yung sa approval, no? And trust. Yung pagtitiwala, medyo, that's a more, that yung trust rating is much more, what's this, with a basis, no? Kasi pagtitiwala, ibig sabihin, may equate mo na medyo tanggap nila yung isang individual na pinagkakatiwalaan nila. Yung approval is really more popularity on the part of Vice President. And we've seen Vice Presidents in the past who have higher approval ratings than the President.
Yeah.
Essentially because the President is held accountable more than the Vice President is.
Okay, yeah. That's a good point.
Yung numbers ni Vice President, affected pa rin ba siya nung what's happening to her father? Kasi nawawala na rin sa balita yung tatay niya, no? Except
parang
occasionally, kung may nangyayari sa ICC, may impact pa rin ba kay VP Sara?
makikita yan doon sa regional doon sa subnational Yung NCR niya nakabawi siya. Nananatili siya sa majorya pero it's a slight majority, no? Pero ang dahilan kung bakit hindi bumabagsak ang approval at trust rating ng Vice Presidente dahil sa Mindanao at dahil sa bahagi ng Visayas. So it's largely, you have almost everyone approving or trusting the Vice President in Mindanao. And then in the Visayas, you have a higher approval or trust rating relative to the national. 7 out of 10 are trusting of the Vice President in the Visayas. And it's the same figure, no? Basically, you have about 7 out of 10 approving of the Vice President also in the Visayas. Pag kumalas na yung Visayas in terms of approval and trust towards the Vice President, then you would expect a decline. But of course, the Visayas composed of 4 regions. No? In those 4 regions, she probably enjoys high approval in one region, the Central Visayas, and more or less stable yung kanyang approval in the 3 other remaining regions, which are NIR, Western Visayas, and Eastern Visayas.
Nung na-impeach siya, ano yung impact sa kanya? I just want to remember, no?
Yeah.
Kasi I'm asking because malapit na yung deadline for yung
The one-year ban.
well, hindi deadline kundi yung date na sinet ng Supreme Court na pwedeng mag-file ng new impeachment complaint, which some of the minority members sa House are saying they are planning to do. Yung nakaraan, tong una, ano yung impact?
Yung pinakamalaking impact sa kanya, was not so much the impeachment per se, because that came in February, if I'm not mistaken, Yung medyo naka-apekto talaga sa approval at trust niya, kung ating matatandaan, congressional investigations. Yung congressional investigation, yung good governance, then yung Quadcom, although she did not appear. And then there was also an instance when she was being asked by the subcommittee on finance with regard to the Vice President's proposed budget. Those investigations led to erosion of her approval and trust. Pero pagkatapos nun, hindi. She was given relief after the arrest of the father. And the approval and trust ratings that we're seeing now are essentially the same that she has obtained since March. Hindi gumagalaw. Now, question is, bababa ba yan pag nagsimula ulit yung impeachment?
Yes.
Of course, it will change, but it will depend largely on her demeanor. It will depend also on whether she will answer categorically all of the charges and whether an impeachment would really be filed. And given the process that is required by the Supreme Court right now, that means that the first thing that she has to do is to appear in Congress to answer all of the charges.
Ang laki ng approval. Go ahead, Bok.
Hindi, tatanong ko lang nga yung kasi does the corruption issue actually affect her? Kasi parang naka-recover siya after the budget scandal na dumating at the start of the year. Pagkatapos noon, yung aresto nga ng tatay niya, they got sympathy votes. Madident pa kaya siya kung sakasakaling ma-revive yung corruption issues?
Well, kinakailangan ibalik ulit yun kasi parang pinapahinga siya Diba? Pinapahinga na siya doon sa mga posisyon na yun at nakatuon ng pansin ngayon dito sa mas malawakang scandal, the flood control projects. Of course, I know that the narrative being played up by the supporters of the Vice President is that in terms of the scale of corruption in hers is minuscule. But to me, it's still corruption. It's still, if it is alleged to be illegal, then and it's proven to be illegal, then she would have to be answerable and held accountable for it. Pero yung nga lang, napapahinga siya wala nang investigations that have happened since March. And if the impeachment proceeds, then that's the only time that we can say, depending on how she responds to it, how it will be affecting public opinion.
So let me ask you this question as a political scientist naman. But in relation to what you just said a while ago, na of course people are saying na we're talking about a difference in the degree of the amounts involved. Her confidential funds versus the hundreds of billions being lost in the flood control projects, maybe more than $1 trillion sa flood control project. Come impeachment time, kung matuloy man yun, I get what you mean na corruption is corruption, whatever the number is. Pero how do you think the public or how do you think people will weigh the numbers? Kasi nga, one is 125 million versus another one which is in the hundreds of billions.
Well, sa akin, Ed, it will really be in terms of the evidence that will be presented by whoever will be pursuing those impeachment cases. Regardless of whether it's 125 million or whether it's, I think in aggregate, parang more than 200 million. No? But if it is proven that that amount was not spent based on what is established, and that amount was misused, then the Vice President should be held accountable. But again, the evidence that should be presented in this case. So now, will the public react positively or negatively to such accusations? If the evidence does support, I think the public will accept the decision of, let's say, if it gets to the impeachment court. It's similar to the impeachment case of the late Chief Justice Corona, di ba? The public was ambivalent about the impeachment. Parang some people who were supportive of the Chief Justice then were saying, this is just a one way for the President then to get Chief Justice Corona out of the picture. But eventually, when it was established that he had certain assets which were not declared, even the ones who were supportive of him in the court changed their minds. And when we look at, let's say, the polls at the time and whether they thought that the decision was something that was acceptable, we saw that it was accepted by a majority of Filipinos. So again, it is based on what evidences will be presented. Kung wala ebidensya, mahirapan tanggapin ng mamamayan. Maasahan natin na hindi tatanggapin yan ng mga sumusuporta sa Vice Presidente, no, kahit na anong ebidensya.
Yes, sir.
Pero sa pangkalahatan, siguro, yung mga tao sa ibang lugar na hindi naman nasa baluarte ng mga Duterte, ay mas bukas ang kanilang kaisipan.
Yes, sir. Although, sir, one possible, again, I have to stress, possible difference lang is, yung flood control issue, the corruption scandal in infrastructures in DPWH is an ongoing thing that will go way past February of this year. So, in other words, kahit kung sakaling umandar yung impeachment complaint against VP Sara, kasabay pa rin yan malamang at hindi pa rin natatapos yung issue ng korupsyon sa DPWH. Baka lalo pa lumaki, for all you know. Diba? So that might throw maybe a monkey wrench into the whole mix.
Yeah, well, yun yung context, no, na siguro mas mahirap na paliwanag kung bakit may pinipulso ko sa pinipulso mo itong impeachment samantalang mayroon mas malalaking mga skandalo. Pero kung pareho may pursue at resolute ang pursuit, then I don't think that the public will see it as something that is simply just politicking.
Sir, let me throw in...
disapproval ni Bongbong Marcos, naka-factor in ba doon yung kasi maraming mga disaffected din doon sa nagtatapos tong Pasko, nagtatapos yung taon, yung big fish hindi nakakulong, tapos parang nag-slow down yung momentum ng pag-iimbestiga, holding people accountable, hindi ba? Naka-factor in kaya yon doon sa disapproval?
Possibly, may kasama yan doon sa pagtaas ng disapproval sa National Capital Region. No? But in other areas, we don't see that much of an increase in terms of disapproval. So, kasi yung presidente naman, nagbitaw siya ng pananalita na bago mag-December 15 ay may makukulong. Siguro mga early December na ba yun o late November?
Yes.
And yung pag-resonate ng ganung pananalita at pahayag, maaari may katagalan at hindi na masyadong nasakop netong survey na ginawa namin nung kalagitnaan ng Disyembre.
Saka makarecover kaya yon. Halimbawa, pagpasok ng first quarter, for example, makita ng mga tao ay resolute nga naman pala tong gobyerno to in going after the big fish, makaka-recover siguro, no?
Depende talaga kung ano mangyayari sa buwan ng Enero at Pebrero bago gawin yung survey that normally we do in February or March. It really depends on what will happen then. Kung talaga meron ng malalaking isda na na-arrest, baka makarecover yan. Ang kaibahan na itong survey sa fourth quarter sa first quarter. Yung first quarter, medyo mas bukas ang mga tao na maghayag ng kanilang kalooban, no? Lalo-lalo na, joke nga namin pag wala ka ng pera, baka mas mapamnuri ka. Diba? Kung walang nangyari sa Enero at Pebrero, maaring hindi magbabago, no? Maaring makakasama sa administrasyon. Pero kung merong laking bagay na nakamit ang administrasyon, meron nang na aresto, meron nang na-charge na medyo malalaking mga tao, makakatulong yan, no? At kaugnayan doon sa sinasabi ni Ed, kung ipropose yung impeachment, ibig sabihin, pare-parehong level yung resoluteness sa pagitan ng pamahalaan, kahit nakakampi ka, kahit nakaalitan ka, kung iisa lang ang level o intensity ng kanilang initiative, at ito'y seryoso, hindi sila pupulahan ng tao na parang namumulitika lang kayo.
Sir, given the President's low ratings compared to VP Sara's ratings, I'm just playing with ideas here. What are the chances of kung sakaling February si VP Sara faces impeachment charges, what are the chances of the President also facing impeachment charges as well?
Well, the chances of to begin with, as a political scientist, Ed,
yes, sir.
Yung impeachment is a numbers game in the lower
Yes, sir.
house. No?
Yeah.
Of course, there are processes now that they will have to comply with given the Supreme Court decision. So, palagay ko naman hindi makakuha ng numero kung nananatili yung alyansang sumusuporta sa administrasyon. Diba?
Yes, sir.
Ang impeachment na ilalatag laban sa Pangulo. Doon sa Vice Presidente naman, yung impeachment, kinakailangan talagang very tight yung kaso, no? Nandoon yung mga ebidensya. At dapat ay talagang
Yung proseso.
malawak yung ebidensya para pag hinarap nila ito, lalo-lalo na doon sa inaakusahan sa Vice Presidente, kinakailangan bakita ng Vice Presidente ng controverting evidence, di ba? So, yun ang medyo malaking bagay, no? It will be hard for us to really imagine the President being impeached now, given that he has a supermajority in the House. It will be difficult, however, to impeach the Vice President given the Supreme Court decision.
Well, sir, I asked that because we all know the track record of Congress. Pagpapalapit ng eleksyon, 2028 coming around the corner after 2026 next year, 2027 na campaign period. Usually legislators will hitch their cart on whoever appears to be the front runner. So yes, maybe 2026 baka hindi pa ganun ka desidido yung iba sa Kongreso na tumalon, pero if the numbers don't change by 2027, you might have I don't know, I'm just playing with ideas here. You might have a bigger argument for politicians to jump ship and change to the other side of the fence.
They may or they may not. Sa akin, they may jump ship because it seems that the trust rating and approval rating show that the President has the political capital, right? They may not because the President is still the President and has control of the release of funds. So in that case, you take the risk. If you are a politician, will you go and jump the ship and then transfer to another ship of a prospective winner? Or will you stay until such time that the elections are over? Or closer to the elections? Kasi
And then that's why you jump ship.
2027, presidente pa rin si Bongbong Marcos eh. Siya pa rin magde-decide kung anong releases ang
That's true.
papayagan.
They can They can
Ang
just as
sabi ko
well
nga,
wait for the elections to finish
President-
before jumping ship eh.
The president is still the patron-in-chief, no?
Yeah.
So in that sense, would you go against the president? He might not have the political capital, but he has the power.
Lahat
and
ng
it can
pondo mo niyan, Ed, magiging for later release.
So kung
For
may
later release, meaning no release.
wala, hindi release.
Follow up ko na lang yung question ni Ed, Professor. Kasi 2026, kahit malayo pa 2028, actually, nag-umpisa na yung mga nag-a-align na yung mga tao, no? And may balak ba kayong maglabas na ng mga yung presidential balls for 2028?
Sa amin normally yung aming mga pre-election survey for a presidential contest, the earliest that we do it is the year before the election.
Yeah.
The earliest is, I think, the first quarter of 2027. Kasi sa ngayon, hindi mo pa alam kung sino tatakbo. You can come up with a long list, you can come up with sets. You don't know exactly what will happen. No? In 2027, there might be a little bit more clarity. Pero eventually, ang baseline mo niyan, yung last quarter survey ng 2027. You know who the candidates are. Or maybe the closest that you can say will be the second quarter 2027.
That's the point I want to raise nga, Professor. Kasi merong mga early surveys na, no? At syempre, ang lumalabas, ang frontrunner is the Vice President. Pero yung ibang nagsasabi, kasi siya yung nag-iisa lang naman na
Yep.
na kilala ngayon na sure na tatakbo
Na interesado.
in 2028. In fact,
Yeah.
kahit yung ibang yung mga sumusunod sa kanya na sa ranking ng mga early surveys, nagsasabi, hindi mo kami tatakbo. Ba't? Yun ang sinasabi nila eh. Tama ba yon yung observation na yon?
Tama yun.
Siyempre, ikaw number one kasi ikaw lang naman yung pangalang lumulutang at this point.
Yeah. Hanggat hindi pinal yung listahan ng mga tatakbo, hindi mo masasabi na ito ay firm na eh.
Frontrunner.
Nyari nung 1997, natatandaan ko, may isang survey nung hindi ko lang alam kung kailan ginawa. Hindi ko matandaan kung kailan ginawa. I think it was middle of 1997 or late 1997. Statistically tied si GMA tsaka si Erap Estrada. But eventually, this was I think a survey done by the social weather stations. I will have to verify, no? But that's my recall. Unfortunately, since I'm a little bit more aged, my recall might be bad. But eventually, GMA decided to slide down to the vice presidency in favor of Joe de Venecia, and Erap really won by a landslide. So if she decided to run in 1998, it would have been a tighter contest between her and Erap Estrada then. Of course, she won as vice president, eventually was ascended into the presidency by a Supreme Court decision. So that's another matter. So it's too early. You can run any survey now, but it's really just sabi mo nga, ang measure yan ay measure nung strength nung incumbent na vice president na nagsaad na siya'y bukas at tatakbo. At madalas niya sinasabi, kaya siya kini-criticize ngayon kasi siya nangunguna na kandidato sa 2028. Pero hindi mananatili yan. Nakita na natin yan sa ibang mga eleksyon, halalan, na yung nangunguna sa umpisa ay eventually hindi sila ang nananalo.
Okay.
Yung numbers ni BBM, should he be worried? Kasi alam ko si GMA nun mas mababa eh.
Si Jimmy parang walang pakialam nun eh.
She lasted 9 years.
Sabi ko, it's a question of the political capital versus your own power.
Yeah.
You have power and you can use that power in order to regain the political capital. The question is, will they do so? Will they use the power that they possess, the authority that they possess, in order to, mobilize more support for himself and his administration? That we have to see, which we have not seen over the last more than 3 years.
Okay, we'd like to say thank you to Policy President Ronald Holmes for joining us this afternoon. Si Tito Ronald pala, nalimutan ko, meron pala siyang meeting with the bishops today.
Dinadasal
Holy
siya.
siya ngayon, holy. Holy heckler.
No, the bishops,
Huli, hindi huli.
the bishops kasi like to meet with the sinners, the sinful people, more than they want to meet with the holy, because they're more in need yung mga the people na makasalanan eh.
Probably,
additional work.
probably Tukayo needs more place because his confessions will be longer.
Kaya nagsabi yan ha. Sige, maraming salamat po. Policy
Thank you,
President Ronald Holmes.
Professor.
Dr. Holmes. Thank you,
Bye-bye.
sir. Ingat po. You're watching Storycon on One News. We just need to take a break. We'll be right back. We've got developing news in the stories behind the headlines. Welcome back to Storycon, the Story Conference. I'm Ed Lingao, and of course with us, Ami Pamintuan of the Philippine Star, and Raul Llamas is meeting with bishops. Okay. Ami, let's now talk to mobile journalist Arles de los Santos,
Yep.
reporting us live from Arles, kamusta ang EDSA rehab plan?
Hi,
Nako,
Alex.
po Katami, magandang hapon sa inyo. Nandito nga tayo ngayon sa kahabaan ng EDSA dito sa Ross Boulevard na naging jump point ng rehabilitasyon ng EDSA na paulit-ulit ng naantala at ni-reschedule. Kung makikita ninyo dito sa aking paligid, talagang halos buhol-buhol na yung mga sasakyan. Paano ba naman sa unahan na mga bahagi lamang nito, nandun yung baklaran, yung tindahan, and then nandun yung MRT at yung LRT, kaya naman talagang mabilis na nagbabara yung trapiko dito dahil kabahagi na, ka-share na sa kalsada ng mga private vehicles yung EDSA bus lane. Kasama kasi yun sa inuuna at pinaprioridad na ayusin ng DPWH kung saan dito sa bahagi na ito, tuloy-tuloy yung kanilang road reblocking bago ito lagyan ng aspalto. Kanina nag-ikot tayo sa ibang mga bahagi ng EDSA, nakita natin na may mga aspalto na, but at least on this area, 2 lane, yung hindi mapakinabangan pa at mapasukan ng publiko dahil nga sa mga tinibag na mga bahagi nito dahilan para magkaroon ng mabigat na trapiko.
Teka, yung kasi sa lagay na yan, traffic na yan, holiday ngayon. Paano pag nagpasukan na? Hanggang kailan ba itong EDSA rehab?
Prospect or target ng DPWH po ay 8 months. Magkakaroon yan ng 2 phases. Yung phase 1 ay magsisimula ngayong December hanggang May. So ayan yung ngayong panahon na to, December 24, 11 p.m., 24/7 na, dire-diretso yung kanilang paggawa dito sa EDSA Rehab, And then pagdating ng January 5, magiging 10 p.m. to 4 a.m. onwards na yung kanilang repair dahil yun yung inaasahan na, na bumalik na yung mga kababayan natin, yung mga kapatid natin mula sa kanilang mga probinsya. And then yung phase 1 ay matatapos na target sa May. But yung phase 2, wala pa silang update ngayon book, pero malayong-malayo yan doon sa initial na 2 taon na EDSA Rehab kung saan kailangan pangaraw sarado yung buong EDSA and umabot nga ng 16 billion pesos yung naunang budget.
Yung 10 p.m. to 4 a.m. Arles, paano yun? Kapag sa umaga, nakatiwangwang pa rin naman yan eh. So, sarado pa rin yung, may mga portions pa rin na hindi madadaanan ng mga tao.
Nga. Good question.
Diba?
Yes, Ami. Actually, kasama din yun sa mga tinanong natin kay Secretary Vince Dizon. Ayon sa kanila, hindi naman daw kasi complete overhaul yung gagawin nila. Kagaya dito sa nakikita natin sa screen natin, ito yung bahagi ng EDSA Ross Boulevard, Ayan yung may mga bahagi daw na kailangan na talagang tibagin at palitan ng mga bagong semento bago lapatan ng aspalto. Hindi ganyan yung sitwasyon sa ibang mga bahagi dito sa EDSA, Yung iba pinapatuyo na lamang yung aspalto and then madadaanan na. Pero kapansin-pansin, of course, yung hindi pantay, na level. Medyo makapal yung aspalto, parang 2 patong yung ilang nakita natin kanina, And syempre, hindi siya basta-basta madadaanan ng ating mga kapatid na mga motorista, ayon naman kay Secretary Vince Dizon, yung mga commuter, of course, maaapektuhan nito, pero yung DOTR ay nagtap na sa ibang mga vehicle services, yung mga bus operator na magdagdag nga ng mga masasakyan habang holiday season at habang gumugulo nga itong rehabilitasyon ng EDSA.
Yung pinakamatinding repair will be for 2 weeks lang, di ba?
Yes, Ami. Ayan yung 24/7.
Ano na yung gagawin?
Actually,
2 weeks.
After 2 weeks, Ami, magkakaroon na ng yung asphalt overlay, yung mga bahagi lang na kinakailangan. So, before kung maalala natin yung complete overhaul, yung talagang titibagin yung buong habaan ng EDSA, 24 kilometers and isasarado for 2 years. Hindi na daw ganoon yung magiging sistema ngayon. Ayon kay Secretary Vince Dizon, base na rin sa kanilang mga engineer, no, hindi naman daw kailangan talaga tibagin yung buong EDSA. May mga mapapakinabangan pa rin daw ng bahagi and kailangan na lamang lagyan ng asfalto, and yung pinili nilang asfalto, ito daw yung mataas yung kalidad, no, na makaka-withstand ng pabago-bagong panahon. But it is for us to find out kung paano nga ba at gaano katagal ito maglalas, no, sa panahon na meron tayo dito sa bansa.
Arles, I think yung ibig sabihin ni Ami kanina sa tanong niya, kasi by January 5, di ba, 10 p.m. to 4 a.m. na lang yung trabaho para hindi mag-traffic diyan sa EDSA. I suppose what she meant was, so ibig niyang sabihin ba from 4 a.m. until 10 p.m. Kumbaga the rest of the time pwedeng gamitin yung mga linya ng EDSA. Kasi baka mamaya ang trabaho nasa 10 to 4 lang ng gabi, pero the rest of the day naman naka-fence off pa rin, hindi mo magagamit.
Correct.
It doesn't make
Actually,
sense.
medyo nakikita na natin yung ganyang picture dito, no? Merong mahabang barikada, though hindi naman lahat, no? Like hindi dire-diretso at nagkalat yung kanilang mga backhoe at yung mga bulldozer. So, gaya niyan, may mga bahagi na patag pa din, pero nakasarado na at hindi na mapakinabangan. But we're expecting na medyo magiging kaparehas yung sitwasyon sa paparating na mga araw. Ayon kay Sec Dizon, pagka natapos daw nalagyan ng asphalt overlay, pwede na daw gamitin ng publiko. No? Pero kung magiging utay-utay, talaga nga namang traffic at sakit sa ulo ang maaaring asahan ng ating mga kapatid na motorista.
Pero Bok, what I mean is this kung ang work is only from 10 p.m. to 4 a.m. para hindi makaabala sa traffic, what about the rest of the time? Baka mamaya wala nang tatrabaho ng daytime, pero naka-fence off pa rin yung kabuhang bahagi. Ganun din yun.
Hindi mo rin magagalit.
Correct. Ganun.
Except humaba lalo ang trabaho.
So parang...
Baka din nilang bilisan.
Yes, yun talaga yung dapat daw talaga the goal daw ng DPWH na matapos ito. So ngayong December 24 to January 5, priority yung bus lane, no, yung northbound and southbound. And then January 5 onwards, lane by lane daw nilang lalagyan ng asfalto. So hindi naman masasarado talaga yung buong EDSA. Pero aabangan nga natin paano kapag may mga barikada, may trabahador pa din sa umaga at mapapakinabangan pa rin ba o kailangan nilang magtiis ng trapiko, yung publiko.
Arles, may mga in-interview ka bang mga motorista o commuter? Ano sabi nila?
May nakausap tayo kanina, no, isang jeepney driver, si Kuya Alexus, kung saan sinabi niya, yung dati daw na kinikita nila, no, na malinis na 800 to 1,000 pesos. Dati daw, nauuwi na nila yun agad. No? Pero dahil nga dito sa traffic, kung makikita nyo itong mabigat na traffic na to, nakaka-apekto na daw yan. Naging 50% na lamang daw yung kinikita at nauuwi nila. No? Kasi mabagal sila makabalik sa kanilang terminal, mabagal makapagbaba ng pasahero, and then yung bus lane, medyo nakadikit na din siya halos kalapit ng sidewalk. So yung iba, may mga tumatakbo, may mga nakikita tayong ganun. So talagang agawan na rin sila ng pasahero. Kaya ang kanilang panawagan sa DPWH ay kung maaari talaga bilisan at huwag itaon nga sa susunod na mga paggawa nito sa kaparehas na panahon kung saan talagang kailangan ng publiko ang kalsada.
Okay.
Yung mga yung mga commuter, hindi ba hirap maghanap ng sasakyan?
Mahirap, Ami, dahil dito, kaya dito, sa kung nasan tayo ngayon, kanina nakausap natin yung ilan dito. Sabi nila, ito kasi mahabang mahabang waiting shed. Pero dun sa unahan kapag nilakad natin, dun yung pinaka parang may zombie apocalypse from time to time. Yung naghahabol ng mga jeep, no? So yung ibang mga jeep, hindi na nila nakikita doon sa kanang bahagi kasi yung iba, dito na sa kaliwa. Dito kung makikita ninyo, dito na sila sa kaliwa. So nahihirapan sila, medyo patintero din. Ito yung isa sa mga pinakamahirap sakayan dito sa kahabaan. Itong heritage area lalo, no? Dito laging punuan na talagang habulan ng mga jeep.
Okay, maraming salamat sa iyo, mobile journalist Arlos de los Santos. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. Ami Pamintuan, ang editor-in-chief ng Philippine Star. And Tito Rol Llamas for being with us in spirit. Just again tomorrow at 4 p.m. for Storycon. I'm at Ligao, kapatid. We are one news, all sides, all the time.
This is the Story Conference Group or the Storycon Group.